Most men will never realize how many women think about them long after the conversation ends. Not because they said the right thing, not because they tried harder, but because something shifted inside her body, and she didn't have words for it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Women don't obsess over men who chase approval. They obsess over men who change their internal state without trying. The ones who don't fill silence. The ones who don't rush connection. The ones whose presence slows her down instead of speeding her up. Obsession doesn't happen in compliments or promises. It happens in stillness. In the moments she feels calmer, safer, more grounded, and can't explain why. And there are 7 signs that reveal when you've created that kind of imprint. She may never say it. She may even deny it. But once these signs are present, you stop being an option and become a standard she measures everything else against. This isn't dating advice, and it's definitely not about tricks or tactics. What you're about to hear are psychological markers that reveal when you've become an anchor in a woman's mind. If you value clarity over comfort, like this video and subscribe, because here we don't sugarcoat female psychology. Now let's break down what actually makes a woman quietly fixate on one man. Number 1, you make stillness feel powerful. Most men believe attraction is built through motion. More words, more messages, more explanations. They panic at silence because silence feels like loss of control. So they rush to fill it. They talk when nothing needs to be said. They explain when nothing is unclear. And without realizing it, they teach a woman that their nervous system is unstable. Your stillness does the opposite. Women read energy before they process language. Long before she analyzes your intentions, her body is scanning for cues of safety or threat. When you don't rush to respond, don't scramble to entertain, don't bend yourself into shapes just to be felt, her nervous system slows down. And that slowdown is not boredom, it's regulation. Stillness is not absence, it's containment. Where most men leak anxiety through constant engagement, you hold your ground. You move at your own pace. You speak when it matters, not when you feel pressure to perform. And that sends a signal that bypasses logic. This man is centered. This man is not trying to extract something from me. This man is in control of himself. That's why stillness feels powerful to her. Around men who overcompensate, a woman's body stays alert. She may laugh, flirt, even engage, but internally, she stays braced. Around you, that brace drops. Her breathing changes. Her shoulders soften. Her mind stops racing ahead. Not because you did something impressive, but because you didn't introduce chaos. Safety is the foundation of obsession, and most men misunderstand that. They think safety is predictability or niceness. It's not. Safety is the absence of volatility. It's the sense that nothing is about to erupt emotionally if she missteps. Your calm creates that. While other men try to stimulate her, you stabilize her. While they try to excite, you ground. And here's the truth most men aren't ready to hear. The man who calms a woman is the man she thinks about when she's alone. Not because he overwhelmed her, but because her body remembers the relief of being near him. It's not that she was excited by you. It's that her system could finally rest. Number 2, you create certainty without explaining yourself. Uncertainty keeps a woman alert. Certainty lets her rest. And most men sabotage this without realizing it. Not by being unclear, but by trying too hard to clarify. They over-explain their intentions. They over-promise outcomes. They narrate their thinking as if transparency will create trust. But what it actually creates is instability. Because when a man keeps adjusting his words, his tone, his position, a woman doesn't feel informed. She feels like the ground is shifting. Certainty isn't control. It's consistency. You don't explain yourself into credibility. You move in a way that doesn't require explanation. Your words match your actions. Your energy stays the same whether she's warm or distant. You don't rush to fix discomfort, and you don't scramble to reassure. And that steadiness does something subtle but powerful. It quiets her internal noise. A woman's mind is always scanning for patterns. When your behavior is clean and predictable, not boring, but grounded, her mind stops working overtime. Psychologically, this is cognitive ease. It's the state where her brain no longer has to anticipate emotional swings or hidden motives, and when her mind gets quiet, attraction deepens. Most men confuse intensity with confidence. They think strong feelings, fast pacing, emotional highs and lows are what keep a woman engaged. But intensity keeps her vigilant. Certainty keeps her present. You don't need to be mysterious. You don't need to withhold information to create intrigue. Your certainty comes from not wavering, from not negotiating your posture, your values, or your direction based on how she reacts in the moment. There's a particular kind of man women notice without trying to. He's not performing. He's not chasing attention. He doesn't force eye contact or fill space with charm. He simply occupies space with calm purpose. And even if he says very little, something about him lingers because his energy doesn't fluctuate. That's what makes her stay mentally connected. Women don't obsess over men who make them feel excited and confused. They obsess over men who make them feel settled without feeling trapped. The ones who don't create emotional static. The ones whose presence lowers the volume of the world around them. She doesn't fixate on the man who makes her heart race. She fixates on the man who makes her mind go quiet. Number 3. You carry scarcity without playing games. Most men misunderstand scarcity because they learn it backwards. They think it's about withholding attention, delaying replies, or acting indifferent on purpose. That's not scarcity. That's performance. And women feel the difference immediately. Real scarcity isn't something you do to her. It's something that already exists in your life. You're not avoiding her to provoke anxiety. You're selective because your energy is already allocated. You have a life that isn't waiting for her input to begin, and that distinction matters more than any tactic ever could. Men who lack purpose tend to overexpose themselves. They text too much. They explain too often. They make themselves endlessly available, hoping availability will be mistaken for value. But abundance of access doesn't create desire. It erodes it. When a woman can reach you anytime, with no friction, no cost, no adjustment on her part, your presence stops feeling meaningful. Scarcity changes that dynamic. When your time isn't unlimited, your presence gains weight. Conversations don't blur together. Moments stand out. She replays what you said, not because you were clever, but because she doesn't get endless exposure to you. That space between interactions becomes a psychological gap, and that gap is where obsession grows. This isn't about disappearing. It's about alignment. You don't pull away to punish. You don't go cold to create leverage. You simply don't chase connection that isn't earned. And that forces her to ask a question most men never inspire. Where do I stand with him? That question doesn't come from fear of abandonment. It comes from curiosity mixed with challenge. Here's the truth most men resist. When you're always ready, always accessible, always accommodating, you become invisible, predictable, flat. Not because you lack worth, but because nothing about you requires effort to access. You don't represent loss. You represent opportunity that must be stepped into. And women are wired to invest where investment feels earned. When she realizes she doesn't fully have you, not because you're evasive, but because your life is structured, her attention sharpens. She listens more closely. She becomes more intentional. Not because she's being manipulated, but because she senses value. She doesn't feel abandoned. She feels challenged. Number 4. You lead with purpose, not attention. Women don't follow words. They follow momentum. And most men lose attraction the moment their momentum starts orbiting around a woman instead of their own direction. A man without purpose becomes reactive. His mood rises and falls with her availability. His confidence expands when she's warm and collapses when she pulls back. And a woman can feel that shift immediately, not as insecurity, but as a lack of structure. You're different. Your life is already moving somewhere. You have priorities that existed before her and will continue with or without her validation. That doesn't make you distant. It makes you anchored. And when a woman senses that your attention isn't the engine of your life, something changes inside her. She feels gravity. Purpose does something subtle but critical. It reduces emotional reactivity. You're less triggered by small fluctuations, less tempted to chase reassurance, less inclined to seek constant confirmation. And that emotional economy creates space where attraction can breathe instead of suffocate. From her perspective, you're not standing still, waiting to be chosen. You're already in motion. And the question shifts from, how do I keep his attention, to, do I belong in his world? That's not manipulation. That's polarity. Purpose creates structure, and structure creates long-term safety. Not the soft kind of safety built on comfort, but the deep kind that comes from direction. When she watches how you move through your own life, how you commit, how you persist, how you handle responsibility, she's not listening to what you say about yourself. She's studying the trajectory you're on. And women don't attach to men who revolve around them. They attach to direction. Here's the contrast most men miss. The man who centers his life around a woman slowly drains attraction from the connection. The man who centers his life around a mission invites her to align herself. One feels heavy. The other feels expansive. You don't need to announce your goals. You don't need to sell your ambition. Your actions already speak. Your time allocation already tells the story. And that quiet consistency is what draws her in. Obsession doesn't start when she feels needed. It starts when she feels she has to adjust her place in your orbit. Number 5. You stay calm when she tests you. Most men experience a woman's tests as threats. They hear attitude and feel attacked. They sense distance and panic. So they rush to defend, explain, or correct, without realizing they're failing the test the moment they react. Because tests aren't designed to break you. They're designed to check your foundation. A woman tests to see what moves you, what shakes you, what makes you lose posture. Not because she wants conflict, but because she needs to know whether your center is real or performative. Emotional pressure reveals structure, and most men reveal that they don't have one. When she pushes, a reactive man takes it personally. He argues his point. He tries to win the moment, or he collapses into appeasement. Either way, he shows her that her emotional state controls him. And once she feels that power, respect quietly drains. You respond differently. You don't match her tone. You don't escalate. You don't rush to fix her feelings or prove your intentions. You pause. You stay grounded. You redirect without ego. And in doing so, you communicate something far more powerful than reassurance. Her emotions don't destabilize you. That's not coldness. That's containment. From her perspective, something shifts. She realizes she can bring intensity without creating chaos. She can express without managing you. And that realization produces trust. Not the verbal kind, but the embodied kind. The kind that settles into her nervous system. Most men think attraction is built by meeting a woman's emotional energy. It's not. Attraction deepens when you regulate it. When you show that you can hold space without being swallowed by it. This is where authority is born, not through dominance, but through composure. A man who stays calm under pressure sends a clear signal. I am not afraid of your depth. I don't need to overpower it or escape it. I can stay here without losing myself. And that steadiness gives her permission to soften. Here's the truth that changes everything. The man who doesn't fear a woman's emotions is the man a woman can rely on. Not because he controls her, but because she can't control him. And when she realizes that her tests don't move you, she stops testing. Number 6. You bring order where others bring drama. Chaos is loud. Complaints are contagious. Emotional noise spreads fast, especially in moments of stress. And most men contribute to it without realizing they're doing so. They vent, they argue, they react. They mirror the disorder of the environment and call it authenticity. You don't. When tension enters the room, you don't add to it. You don't rush to be heard. You don't compete for emotional airtime. You observe, adjust, and move with intention. While others spiral, you stabilize. While others look for someone to blame, you look for alignment. That difference is felt immediately. Women are instinctively drawn to men who create structure under pressure. Not because it's impressive, but because it signals competence. And competence, at a biological level, equals survival. A man who stays organized when things get messy tells her something her body understands before her mind ever catches up. This man can handle reality. You don't need to argue to assert yourself. Your posture, your tone, your pacing already do the work. When you speak, it's measured. When you act, it's decisive. And that quiet authority reorganizes the emotional field around you. People adjust without being told to. The room settles without instruction. That's masculine order. Modern culture often glorifies emotional impulsivity, reacting instantly, expressing everything, amplifying every feeling. But impulsivity creates fatigue. Drama exhausts the nervous system. And once a woman experiences the relief of being around a man who brings calm structure instead of emotional clutter, her tolerance for chaos drops. She doesn't crave intensity anymore. She craves you. Not because you suppress emotion, but because you don't let emotion run the environment. You hold a steady frame when others lose theirs, and that frame becomes something she leans into, especially when the world feels unpredictable. Here's the shift that happens quietly. Once she associates you with order, drama loses its leverage. It stops being a tool. It stops being attractive. It starts feeling unnecessary. And when that happens, her attention doesn't scatter. It settles. Number 7. You make peace something she has to earn. Peace is the rarest currency in modern relationships. Everyone wants it. Very few people can create it. And even fewer know how to protect it once they have it. You do. You don't argue to feel powerful. You don't engage in emotional chaos to prove you care. You don't tolerate manipulation disguised as vulnerability. Not because you're rigid, but because you've built a life that functions best in calm. And you're not willing to sacrifice that for temporary connection. That boundary changes everything. Most men try to win a woman by matching her emotions. They escalate when she escalates. They argue when she argues. They mistake emotional intensity for intimacy. But all that does is teach her that chaos gets attention, that volatility is rewarded. You teach a different lesson. You don't entertain drama. You don't feed emotional spikes. You reward consistency, clarity, and respect. When things are aligned, your presence is warm and open. When disorder appears, you don't punish. You withdraw energy, calmly, cleanly, without explanation, and that contrast is powerful. Over time, something subtle happens. She starts adjusting herself. Her tone softens, her reactions slow. Not because she's afraid of losing you, but because she feels the difference between peace and noise. And once her body experiences the stability you bring, returning to chaos feels jarring. Here's the truth most men never grasp. The first man who doesn't react to her emotions becomes the standard she measures all others against. Not because he dominated her, but because he didn't surrender himself to emotional turbulence. Peace becomes associated with you. And once that association is formed, obsession takes root quietly. Not through passion or drama, but through relief. Through the realization that being with you feels easier on her system than being without you. She doesn't crave arguments anymore. She craves your presence. Because peace, once experienced, becomes addictive. And when you walk away from disorder without resentment, without explanation, without chasing, she doesn't feel abandoned. She feels the absence of calm. And that's when obsession begins. What all 7 signs point to is this. Attraction at the deepest level has nothing to do with performance. It isn't about your looks. It isn't about clever lines or emotional intensity. It's about the state you create inside a woman when you're around her, and the absence she feels when you're not. Obsession isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't live in compliments or public displays. It lives in the quiet moments when her body remembers how it felt to be calmer, steadier, more regulated in your presence. When she realizes she didn't have to manage you, didn't have to brace herself, didn't have to stay alert. That's why this kind of attraction lasts. Men who rely on effort burn out. Men who rely on validation lose leverage. But the man who holds his ground, who doesn't chase, doesn't react, doesn't abandon his center, becomes unforgettable without trying. Not because he demanded attention, but because he never needed it. If you recognized yourself in these signs, don't second guess it. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to amplify your presence or explain your value. All you need to do is protect the state you've built, because the moment you start performing, you dilute what made you powerful in the first place. And if you didn't recognize yourself yet, that's not a failure. It's information. Awareness is where control begins. If this perspective resonates, subscribe. This channel is for men who want clarity, not comfort. Comment which sign hit closest to home. And share this with the man who's trying harder every year, but feels less respected each time. Because the men women obsess over aren't louder. They're steadier.